All right, Wushu, welcome. Thank you so much to everyone who are coming here today. Welcome to all the community members, to all the tribal leadership, the students, the faculty, the staff from here at UMD and across the campuses. Also, welcome to all of our joiners on the virtual side of things. So we appreciate everyone. We're honored that you all are taking the time to join us today for this important conversation. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Jill Ortler. This is my 15th year at UMD, and I've been serving as the department head of American Indian Studies here for quite a number of years. It's been my honor to be a part of such a fantastic department. We have the luxury of having Chancellor McMillan here today. He's going to give a little bit of welcoming remarks, and I'm going to return and give some more background and introduce our guests and get started.
Well, thank you, Jill, Professor Dorfler. What a great day for UMD. For those who came from off campus, I see friends and some folks I don't know. I've already introduced myself to a few, but thanks for coming to campus. For those who come from all over campus and are here every day or most days, welcome to you as well. As I was preparing for some hopefully you'll find thoughtful remarks, I was thinking about the first time I sat down at lunch, I believe it was, with then Professor now Regent Tad Johnson, and he started to explain to me the scholarly work that underpins what today is the Truth Report, and what a remarkable commitment of time, resources, and of all the things I've learned in 18 months in this role is that, and I didn't get exposed to this as much as a board member, but this campus and this institution and academia in general really are deeply committed to the idea of dialogue, open expression, and using the scholarly and academic process to further what are often very hard conversations. And there's plenty about this that's hard, but it never deters people from sitting down in rooms like this with experts like we have here to deepen the conversation, no matter the fact that none of that's very easy. I think the other person at that lunch meeting may have been in the back row there, Mr. Rick Smith. Good to see you here. So you two will probably remember when you first explained that to me. It's always a good day at UMD when we have senior leadership from the system. Senior advisor Karen Diver here, and having served in the role Tad is now in, I always thought it was great to be on campus. I know he feels the same way. He's done a lot more of his life here, but Jill's gonna do proper introductions for them, but I'd be remiss if I didn't open with a thank you to both of you for finding your way to the rafters today. So that's really all I have to say is welcome. Let's make this as deep and meaningful a conversation as we can, use our time wisely, and learn from folks who've invested an awful lot in this conversation. Thank you, Jill.
Great, thank you so much. So, please feel free to come forward. We really have a couple of seats in the front row. If you'd like to sit, we're happy to have you. We are all here today for the Truth Project, updates and next steps. I'm going to start with a little bit of background and of course, thank yous. Actually, I have a long list of thank yous. So the Truth Report Towards Recognition, University Tribal Healing Truth Project is a Native organized, Native-led, community-driven research movement that offers multiple recommendations on how the University of Minnesota can be better in relation with Indigenous peoples. Truth was established in 2020 in response to Minnesota Indian Affairs Council, MIAC resolution calling on the University of Minnesota to be a better relative to the 11 tribal nations. Truth Project is a collaborative effort between the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council and the university. So the Truth Project began then basically in 2021, and the final report was submitted in April of 2023. And submitting that report was in a lot of ways a starting point of its own. Back on November 13th of 2023, we held an event here at UMD with a core research team, Misty Blue and Gariola and Adriana Goodwin. I'm biased, but it was a fantastic event. I see some familiar faces here and some new faces. I know that each of us who attended that event, regardless of our familiarity and knowledge with the Truth Report prior, that we gained additional insights and perspectives from their presentation. Our goal for that event was listening and learning with the purpose of advancing change. And so our event today then is part 2 in a lot of ways of that event back on November 13th. If you didn't get a chance to attend that event on November 13th, I'll just note that the recording is available on the Department of American Indian Studies website. So anytime is a good time to go ahead and view that recording. So, as with the first event, it took a lot of work and support to make this event happen. A lot of schedule coordinating, room coordinating. We appreciate everyone bearing with us here. We have a full house, which is excellent. I want to start by thanking my department. Last May, our department wrote an affirmation in response to the Truth Report, which you can also find on our fantastic website. Then last fall, we had decided to go ahead and move forward with this 2-part event. So part 1 in November, part 2 today. I want to say make which to my fellow subcommittee members, Joseph Bauer-Kemper, Holly Rosendahl, Wendy Todd, and Tammy Lawler for all of their work in making those events happen. Also want to add a thank you to Thomas Dorr, who's been instrumental in assisting us with all of the technology, complicated technology for this event and the previous event. And from there, I'll go to our list of co-sponsors. There we go. Thank you so much. We're thrilled to have a long list of co-sponsors beyond the Department of American Indian Studies and the Tribal Sovereignty Institute. We have the Indigenous Student Organization, the Indigenous Geoscience Community, the American Indian Learning Resource Center, the Center for Regional and Tribal Welfare Studies, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, the College of Pharmacy, the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, the College of Education and Human Service Professions, Leibovitz School of Business and Economics, Swenson College of Science and Engineering, the Memory Keepers Medical Discovery Team, the Center for American Indian and Minority Health, and the University of Minnesota Medical School Duluth campus. So thank you. A big round of applause for all of our many co-sponsors. Fantastic to have such excitement and such support around these events. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our featured speakers and soon turn the stage to them. So let me start with Karen Diver. Karen Diver is currently the inaugural Senior Advisor to the President for Native American Affairs, University of Minnesota. In addition to previous roles in higher education, Karen served President Obama as the Special Assistant to the President for Native American Affairs at the White House in the Domestic Policy Council from November 2015 to the end of the administration. Karen served as chairwoman of the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa from 2007 to 2015 and executive director of the YWCA of Duluth from 1992 to 2003. Her current service includes the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission as a U.S. Commissioner, member of the Climate-Related Financial Risk Advisory Committee of the Financial Stability Oversight Council at the Department of Treasury. She has a bachelor's of economics from the University of Minnesota Duluth, yay, and a master's of public administration from the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. Thank you so much to Karen, and also Regent Johnson. Regent Tad Johnson is currently serving on the Minnesota Board of Regents and is a senior advisor for government affairs for the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe Indians. He is Professor Emeritus, recently retired as the University of Minnesota's first Senior Director of American Indian Tribal Nations Relations, where he served as the liaison between the entire University of Minnesota and regional tribal nations. He joined, fantastic, UMD American Indian Studies Department in the fall of 2010, where he served as full professor, department head, director of grad studies, and director of Tribal Sovereignty Institute. And I say we deeply miss having Chad in the department and his many roles. As an enrolled member of the Boy Sport Band of Chippewa, Johnson served as a tribal attorney for more than 35 years and also served as a tribal court judge, a tribal administrator, and is a frequent lecturer on American Indian history and federal Indian law. He spent 5 years with the U.S. House of Representatives, ultimately becoming staff director and counsel to the Subcommittee on Native American Affairs. In 1997, President Clinton appointed Professor Johnson as chair to the National Indian Gaming Commission. Johnson earned his BA from the University of St. Thomas and his law degree from the University of Minnesota. He has served as a faculty member on the National Judicial College and has served on the board of the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. He was nominated by the president and confirmed by the U.S. Senate as a trustee of the Udall Foundation and continues to serve in that role. So thank you so much, both to Senior Advisor Diver and Regent Johnson for being here today. And I know that you're each going to share some thoughts, your role in the Truth Report, and then when you're done and ready, I have a question that we can kind of get started with. We had some questions that remained from the November 13th event. I'll kind of see what fits. I'll get us started with a question and then we'll open it up to the audience, both our in-person audience and our virtual audience, and take turns and go around with that. So with that, I will turn it over to Regent Johnson first, I believe.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Dorfler. It's great to be back here at UMD and see a lot of old friends and former students and a lot of folks I worked with over the years, and Regent McMillan, who I think we first met on the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce board. And so anyway, I thought we talked about a little about how we got here today. And for me, this is kind of like, be careful what you wish for. Because on the way over, I decided, I should get a print version of the Truth Report. So this is it. It cost me $300. It's 550 pages long. And I thought maybe I'd skim it while we were talking here. But yeah, that's not gonna happen. But I was honored to be a prof here for a long time. And the one thing, when we were creating new programs, we looked at creating first the master's degree in tribal administration and governance when I first got here. And from my perspective, having been beaten up by tribes working for Congress, and later, especially when I was chairing the National Indian Gaming Commission, the best thing to do, no matter what, whether or not you're going to take a severe beating on something, is to just go out and talk with the tribes, because they have all the answers, and they have a lot of knowledge and wisdom, and so we were developing what became the Master of Tribal Administration and Governance program. We took 2 years and went out and talked to tribes about what they wanted. And later we did the same thing with the Master Tribal Resource and Environmental Stewardship program and the Tribal Administration and Governance program. And anyway, any success we had along the way, I think we can attribute to the tribes that helped us. I remember going and talking to Karen And, Rick Smith and I went over and chatted with her. And we were like, who do we talk to? But she was the chair of Fond du Lac, and she said, me. And so, anyway, and she said, I just remember what you said. You said, if I'm gonna send somebody through a master's program, when they come out, I want them to know, exactly what the job is, what personnel and what money they're gonna need to accomplish it. And I was like, that kind of became our mantra for creating MTech. And, anyway, so we realized here at UMD that the best thing we could do is go out and chat with the tribes. And so, when Michael Go became first it was another vice president for equity and diversity. And she sent me out to talk with the tribes about, what the American Indian Advisory Committee should look like. And I said, do I get anything for that? Like a course, I can get one less course teaching. And she was like, no, we'll give you mileage. So I went out and talked to all the tribes about what the, and now fortunately, we have advisory councils on all the campuses. I know Jody O'Connor is very active on the one here at UMD. And we have a lot of tribal members from the tribes in the region here. So I decided I would go down and chat with the next vice president for equity and diversity, Michael Go, who is a heck of a nice guy. And he ended up creating a position that I applied for, which was essentially, a tribal liaison for the University of Minnesota to go and meet with the tribes. And anyway, one of the first things that came down the pike was the Wiseman School, the Wiseman Art Museum had some human remains and some funerary objects. And I was like, you can't hold on to those, When I was working, as Jill was going through my bio there, I started working for a congressman named Mo Udall back in 1990. And I got there right as they were drafting the Native American Graves Protection Repatriation Act. And which says essentially that if you receive federal money, you can't hang on to Native American human remains, funerary objects, or objects of cultural attachment. And so the Wiseman Art Museum had how many bodies? Over 100. And a lot of memory spots, which are on the black market worth somewhere between 150 and $200 million. And they, for whatever reason, the way they were reading the statute, they didn't think they had to give them back. And I was kind of like, Karen and I got on board and kind of like, you really have to give those back. And so you realize that.
That was my third week on the job.
That maybe we can do some good here by chatting with people about Native Americans, and it would be very good if the president started meeting with tribes, which President Gable did, and the interim president has continued on with that. And this was a crowd I was expecting. Anyway, so Michael hired me to do that. And these interns started coming to me from the Humphrey schools because they have to do an internship. So Laura Painter was first. She now works for the state legislature. All these people are brilliant. Laura already had a master's degree from the University of California. And then Ann Garagiola, who was quite a ball of fire, she ended up working for Karen for quite a while. And Adriana Goodwin, who was from Red Lake and from Boys Fort. Misty Blue started working with MIAC. And they were kind of like, what do you think we should be doing? I said, it would be really good if we could find out what the tribes of Minnesota think of the University of Minnesota. And are there things we screwed up on, which I'm sure we did, because I witnessed a couple of them already. And so we ended up getting some money from the Mellon Foundation. There was a big grant that came down. It was $5 million. And every time the newspapers would write about that grant, they'd go, you know, the University of Minnesota got $5 million and they're going to be studying wrongs done to Native Americans. And what we got was around $400,000 of the $5 million. And we gave it all out to the tribes. And so then we brought folks in from the reservations. We did get professors to train them on research, et cetera. And we wanted the report written by the tribes. And we wanted their perspectives. And we got it. It's in this box. And there's other views out there. And anyway, in the midst of all that, as Karen was going about doing good work, getting the inventorying done on the bodies, that went rather slowly because of COVID. And I decided I was going to retire. And in the meantime, Regent McMillan, yeah, so I threw all this work to Karen, and then I said, you know, I think I'll retire. And then Regent McMillan stepped down, and I was like, you know, in 170 years, there's never been a Native American on the board of regents. And I, you know, chatted with a couple of people, and they said, that's probably right. Nobody really knew. And since then, I've verified that. So I threw my hat in the ring. The governor appointed me. I had a lot of good support from the tribes. And during that, after I quit, the writing, the truth report, the research had been going on while I was senior director of American Indian Tribal Nation Relations. And I said, that title is way too long. But Michael Bell wrote that one. And I was like, can I just be tribal liaison for the U of M? And he was like, no. So I need you to be a director. So and I begged him to hire Karen. It was like, you know, I was trying to explain who Karen was, you know, how important she was to, and when I finally got her on board, then she took over a lot of stuff that I had been doing. And we started just cruising along on the truth report, getting the research done, getting the money out to the tribes, hiring Misty Blue over at MIAC. MIAC ended up doling out the funds to the tribes. Some of the tribes turned it down, but did, you know, participated in the report anyway. And anyway, they ultimately the writing, as Jill was saying, just got wrapped up, you know, relatively recently. So anyway, it's kind of like, I called Ann Garagiola about an hour ago and said, Karen and I are going to do a presentation. And I said, I said, you got to realize my job as a regent is essentially, I can't do anything unless I get a majority with me. So I'm now, you know, I'm 6 months into a 6-year term. So I'm making friends and trying to influence people. And she's like, are you gonna get these gigantic posters and tell what the big plan is for your response to the truth report? And I said, no, actually, Karen's actually doing stuff. And we talk about once a week, and, you know, we're moving ahead slowly but surely. And eventually we will have a discussion with the Board of Regents about money and all the other things that we would like to see. But in the meantime, she's getting a heck of a lot done out there. And I think I probably should turn it over to you at this point and talk about your journey.
Yeah, so after he convinced people that this position was necessary within the institution, yeah, he retired. No, not that I have lingering feelings about that. But no, I'm just, you're in a good spot. And much like a lot of these roles, we're internal advocates, right? We're the ones there every single day saying, hey, what about this? What about this? And so I come on while the truth report is being drafted. And, you know, Tad and I had this overlap. And then I ended up hiring Garagiola to be in my office as increased my capacity by 0.75 in the Office of Native American Affairs. But my role was really hands off, and I told her, like, you need to finish that. That's your responsibility as a graduate researcher. And I work for the institution. Yes, I work for tribes within the institution. But you are the conduit and that voice for that report. I will not see it until the tribes say it's a public document. So hands off. You're not to talk to me about it. I don't want to know about it. There's a hard stop at that 0.25 time that you are available to other things. Now, mind you, once the report's released, you know, it's going to be all hands on deck. And that 75% of your time plus the 25 are going to start shifting to outcomes. Now, mind you, if anybody was surprised by this report, then we have some history classes to peddle to you, because it shouldn't have been a surprise. And if it was a surprise and you have taken history class, you deserve your money back, because what they gave you was an incomplete education. So none of this was a surprise, none of it whatsoever. Like Tad said, like the memories collection, I was 3 weeks on the job and had to go before the Board of Regents where they were talking about the value of the memories funerary objects. You know, and I had to tell them they have no value. It's illegal to sell them. Don't conflate insurance value with market value. The market value is zero. Yeah, the insurance value is big, but you are prohibited from selling it. You might have still been there, as a regent at the time, you know, and then I was getting a little testy because that didn't work. You know, I was like, I don't get to dig up your grandma because I heard she got buried with her diamond ring and that's valuable to me. You don't get to decide what's valuable, right? This is a legal issue that you need to remedy. And it all worked, you know what I mean? And partly because of, the good intentions of the people at the table to do what was morally right, even if they were prompted a lot by what was legally right. I don't care what got them to the spot, but you know, they got to the spot they needed to be in. So, you know, since that time, then the report was released from MIAC, and I'm going to tell you that for the first about 3 weeks or a month, I just let people stew with it. I'm an Indigenous woman of a certain age. I didn't feel it needed my immediate response. It caused a lot of feelings. Feelings are good. There should have been feelings about it. You know, people would say, you know, like we don't know what to do or something. And I'm just like, good luck with that. You're not going to look at me as one Indigenous person in the senior leadership team and look at me for your solutions to an institutional issue that has been there since its creation. I'm good, but I'm not that good. You know, and as is often the time when you come up against real cultural differences, money doesn't fix feelings. And as a Western-based, pretty traditional institution, we're pretty much thinking that an appropriation of funds makes things all better. And we just know that's not the case, right? That's not healing. That's not reparations. That's not equity. It might be financial equity, but it isn't justice, right? Because it hasn't changed the systems. So I actually just kind of like hung there for a while and let people stew with their feelings, and also said, read it. Don't read just the 2-page summary. Don't just read the executive summary, read the document. Sure, it's a little repetitive here and there. We want you to remember it. We want you to see it. And then it was like, okay, well, that isn't going to work forever, right? So let's start having the conversations. Who needs to have them? Am I supposed to be the one leading it? Who's in charge? So someone point at the Board of Regents, right? And certainly the Board of Regents had their own feelings about all of it. Then you have the president of, the interim president, and he's like, Paradigm, what are you gonna do? And it's like, there is no way to give you a list that undoes. It's like saying, how do we fix colonization, right? I can give you a list, you're just not gonna be prepared to do any of them, right? So I said, this is and then there's this wholly unrealistic expectation of what tribes want. Right? These are institutions that have fought these battles since the treaty times, right? Before treaty times, through various 200 years of federal Indian policy where their sovereignty was either recognized or they had the ability to self-govern or not, right? There was termination era, there was all of these things, and yet tribes persevered. Do they have high expectations and really kind of a hope for immediate gratification? Hell no. I mean, I was one of them, hell no. What we want is the slow and steady drum of progress. We want the awareness first. We want the commitment to the change. And then we know these institutions are like big boats. They turn slowly. What are you doing to progress it on a regular and methodical basis to get it? Knowing that in big institutions, there isn't one body that controls everything, right? So we start plugging away at it. And somebody said, look, are you gonna do like an indigenous strategic plan? I don't know, maybe. It sounds like a diversionary tactic where I'm gonna have to have a committee, and that might be a lot more work than actually just doing some stuff. Or it might be me actually talking to the people who can affect the change and saying, what do you do? Who are you talking to? How are you making those decisions? Or in some cases, my conversation with people at the senior leadership level or at the decision-making level is stand down. You don't get to decide that that's the solution. I will say the number one thing that if I'd like to poke myself in the eye about since the truth report came out is that a lot of people have opinions on what they think should be the next things that we do. And my usual response to that is, have you gotten elected to something and I missed it? If we don't respect tribal sovereignty, this was their report. This was their report based on, and they made those recommendations for next step based on what they think their communities need, their nations need. And so there's a lot of people who say, my department would like this, my program would like that. We should write a grant for this. Who'd you talk to? How'd you decide that? Because any decision that centers our part of the conversation first within the University of Minnesota system that hasn't been vetted through the tribes is just one more effort of great white hope and great white savior complex. I will not be a part of it. I will leave before I am a part of that and not including the tribes. All right, now that I got that off my chest, and just so you know where I'm coming from, those conversations need to be had. What is the art of possible? So let me tell you what the art of possible is that we've accomplished so far. Because things have been happening. Have I been checking in with everybody and keeping them updated? No, the president's been talking to the tribal leaders. They know this, okay? Our NAGPRA expert, the first day was today. They are charged with doing a systemic 5-campus inventory of all items that follow under NAGPRA, as well as items just desired by tribes because it would be nice, like data and research. But definitely if it falls under NAGPRA, they will be in contact across all 5 campuses and doing a systemic, drawer by drawer, closet by closet, department by department, college by college, campus by campus inventory, so we can get those items home. Non-negotiable. They start today. I'm glad I found someone to take the job. And I'm really super excited about who it is. It's the person who did the NAGPRA requirements for the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council, has existing relationships with tribes and as well as tribal historic preservation officers. We don't have to go in and start from scratch in terms of the relationship building and the trust. So that's super exciting. We also have, items that were through, like anatomical, supply companies that were, did you know that you used to be able to go to the bookstore and buy a skull for work if you were in med school? I mean, that's just heinous and weird, right? Definitely cultural differences in how to deal with things. We probably likely we don't, but we have the bulk of all of that identified. Some of it has been reviewed to date using methods that MIAC did not think were conclusive, calling into question some of the original lists about their potential indigeneity. All of them are still being cared for, but we've hired some expertise to do a much more thorough and technologically advanced analysis of those, so that we can have those conversations, narrow down which ones might be potentially indigenous. At that point, we'll be talking to tribes about what we have and any records we may know of where they came from. So that is moving along. Our Indigenous research guidelines were developed and put out from my office. One of the things is like do better around research, ask tribes what they need. Academia calls it community engaged research. Obviously, for this is community led, approved and consented research. And that's what the Indigenous research guidelines are. It's guidance from my office now, not required, although I will notice and say something. We're going to be working through official policy for the University of Minnesota. Over the course of next semester, I meet with every faculty governance committee on the Twin Cities campus to move that forward. And I probably will be marching through the other campuses process next year. So we have those out there now. As it is now, I'm involved through the Office of the Vice President of Research Office. Anything that requires a independent review board and or sponsored projects approval. There's a drop-down menu that asks if it is tribal or indigenous, and it gets routed to my office to review so that I can make sure that the researchers are trained, that they have free, prior, and informed consent from tribes, and actually proactive tribal permission, that they have data sovereignty agreements and things like that. And so I'm in that loop for the review process for research now, which is exciting. We have people starting to be identified from the various colleges on the Twin Cities campus, hoping to expand that through the other campuses. That will be identified as tribal liaisons on the college level. We will train them, and we are coming up with tribal consultation guidelines that will be companion to the research guidelines. All freshmen coming in are required to take a Go for Equity online course. We updated that starting this fall with tribal and indigenous content. So every freshman coming in will have that. We have a 7-part training available online for all faculty and staff that hopefully will spur their curiosity and their knowledge acquisition as this institution of higher ed, and that they'll be signing up for training through UMD after that. We already have some departments that have expressed some interest in that. It's not required at the moment, but if you're going to do work with my office, don't even talk to me till you take the training. I ain't got time to teach you. I got stuff to do. American Indian Learning Resource Center is fully staffed. We were fully staffed at Point, then we lost one. Point is going to be removed from multicultural on the services on the Twin Cities campus, standalone, get their own director. American Indian Studies will have their own spot coming up shortly. It will be co-located with all of the Native Student Support Services, the Student Club, all housed in one hub, hopefully really creating a community that will enable us to recruit and retain our learners on the Twin Cities campus. Rochester's just getting started. They met with the chancellor met with the Prairie Island Indian community, had a great discussion about pathways programming and what the Rochester campus could do. Now, mind you, We went from one student on the Rochester campus, she's like, do I need an advisory board? And I'm like, one student, just take them to lunch. You know, we don't always have to create bureaucracy if you can get the information in an efficient way. Now there's 6, but they're creating these really great living and learning communities. And when Prairie Island heard about that and that ability to really, especially with hard subjects that are taught out of that, STEM subjects out of that campus, being able to create that environment and living and learning community, will be really important just in terms of recruitment and retention on that campus. Cloquet Forestry Center, we're working on it. It's getting closer. Regardless, we need some legislative action. We need some state of Minnesota administrative action. Those conversations are ongoing. In the meantime, Fond du Lac has been so wonderfully gracious to work with the Cloquet Forestry Center operations staff. They're already working cooperatively. They're following Fond du Lac's integrated resource management plan. They're devising ongoing research together. But they've also created some mechanisms where they will continue to do that in the future. Fond du Lac has graciously agreed the teaching research, what's the third one? I always forget it. Teaching research. Service, yeah, that thing. Sorry. Only been 3 years, I don't remember. They understand that that has value, in terms of workforce development. This is all happening kind of lickety split for this institution, and for Fond du Lac, frankly. So Fond du Lac is looking at what does their on-ramp look like? And the University of Minnesota, the College of, CFANS. What's the F? Food. You know that one.
College of Food Agriculture.
Culture. Is it nutritional or natural?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Natural. Thank you.
They're looking at it out, right? They have some longitudinal research there that they would like to continue. Because longitudinal is good, especially in this time of climate change and things like that. Fond du Lac understands that. So there will be a period of time that Fond du Lac has said they are willing to, allow, the forestry, to continue to operate there. While they do some more of these joint management activities and graceful exits and entrances can be kind of coordinated long term. So that's kind of exciting. Land back, it really doesn't get any better than in terms of reparation than taking something that's wholly within a tribal community, that they were displaced from this institution's action. So I can't control at this point the legislature, but those conversations are ongoing. Hopefully, it's a bonding year. We're hoping they'll take it up. They may not because it's a bonding year, but we're asking from the University of Minnesota. So hopefully that could happen in a timely manner. American Indian Studies, got approval to move forward with out of the Twin Cities, got approval to move forward with a PhD program. I guess it takes about 2 years, but they're moving forward with that. And then I did say that the president continues to meet with tribal leaders, as well as, with the chairs of the American Indian Advisory Board. So he's getting that kind of global from tribal communities list, as well as what is campus climate and campus needs of our Native learners from the American Indian Advisory Boards. We are looking at the Native American Promise tuition program, which was tuition and fees, not the full cost of attendance, because the state picked that up. That was a rocky deployment from the state. It was hard for our students to pivot. We're looking at what can we do to move it more towards the full cost of attendance. In particular, noted by both students and tribes, is the tremendous cost, especially in Duluth and Minneapolis, of housing for Native learners. And we know this is true because housing is actually expensive for but it's a particular barrier when Native learners leave their tribal communities and their support networks and come into campuses, that they're able to find affordable, in particular, affordable housing. So that's something we'll continue to cost out and look at. And so we are making progress. And they are reparative, and it is things that were identified in the truth report. And it is things that tribal leaders are talking about, and desiring. And they will continue to be our guide star, those communications with tribal leaders on how we prioritize those actions. And then in closing, I would like to say, everybody is invited to that party if you are from this institution in one of the 5 campuses. I don't control campus budgets. I don't control department budgets or college budgets. I don't control how it comes out of the permanent university fund and the foundation. But the fact of the matter is, we all benefit from all of that. And the most meaningful activities you can take are the ones that are closest to the students in the community. And those decisions happen locally. So go to your department meetings, go to, we all have our faculty governance systems and our own hiring system. Are you saying that we don't have enough representation in faculty and staff? Are you pushing the systems that are there to say, hey, I heard if we do blind submissions and redact out gender and race, that we actually do really good with hiring and diversifying our workforce? That can't be mandated from the top down. We like saying we have faculty governance. Then the responsibility needs to lie with those decision makers. The one who control the budgets, the one that control the policies, the ones that control the procedures. So welcome to the party. Let me know how I can help. I'm done, Jill.
Thank you. The students who are gonna assist with the mics to come up and get those, and we'll just do a little technology switch on the back side here. And then I'll ask a question to kind of get us started. Although credit to Tad and Karen for actually preemptively answering quite a large number of questions. But really fun and exciting to learn more and hear about the variety of things that are going on and the work that is being done, because certainly there is a lot of work to do. And so we had a number of kind of lingering questions from the November 13th event. Like I said, I think a lot of those were, thank you, very good, were already somewhat answered, but I want to ask, cobble together kind of something that was discussed, asked last time, thinking about both the timeline for completing these tasks and a kind of set of questions about whether either the Board of Regents or University of Minnesota administration is gonna set out some kind of a timeline or benchmarks. And if departments are engaging in projects and events, do they report those somewhere? I know, Karen, you talked about a number of things that were probably new information to people here that haven't all been reported out. They've been reported out to tribes, but not necessarily to the university community. And so I think that maybe embedded here is a question is how can also the university community keep up to date on what's going on so that, you know, when faculty or others are out in the community, we get asked about something and we don't know what the university is doing. So timeline, goals, benchmarks, how is this going to be organized? Thoughts about that, or maybe that's a,
Sure.
yeah.
And who does it get reported to? The BIAP or who?
Mary, yeah, oh.
Or, yeah, I was just adding to her question also, who does it get reported back to? Is it BIAP or who?
Yeah, to me, I mean, I think to us, it's the tribal leaders, tribes of Minnesota. MIAC is a state organization, so actually when MIAC is sitting, they've got state commissioners there So it's a, you know, it's a state entity. The tribal leaders are the ultimate, tribal councils and people, you know. So, but anyway, so timeline. So when we first started doing meetings with tribal leaders, with President Gable, the idea was, you know, we want to have a dialogue ongoing with tribes, beginning at that point and never ending. And so, what we're trying to do, and sometimes we feel like two people in a canoe trying to move a fleet of battleships, and change things. You know, it's a long haul that to me never ends. It's changing the way the university approaches things. So we did a retreat with the Regents last summer. And I've been trying to get them to do what Karen was referring to earlier about, you know, there's a video presentation that students will watch when they first come in, and also faculty if they would like to. She was referring to training that we do, and it's that was started by the Tribal Sovereignty Institute here at UMD. It's now kind of a trifecta between the MnDOT folks and the MIAC folks and UMD. And so Joseph Bauer-Kemper from faculty here, and a lot of other folks here at UMD work on this. I had to separate myself out from them because I can't take any money from the university at all. So I have a contract with MnDOT to take people through the 500 years of federal Indian policy. So Karen's going to try to shepherd folks into that, and MnDOT kind of controls the list as who gets in, as to who gets in. So far, that group has trained 6,300 state employees. The fewest number of employees we have trained are from the universities. And that's largely because the mandate and the statute was that this was for state employees, and it's kind of college professors and academicians are kind of in this gray area. And so, so to me, that is a learning system that also goes on forever. That training can continue on. But what we're trying to do is set an entirely new course, not to overuse the nautical terminology. Anyway, but we're when we're talking at the retreat this year, and I don't think I'm telling tales out of school, we had to pick some things that we wanted to prioritize over the next couple of years. And one of the main things was our relationship with the tribes in Minnesota. And these were things we wanted the president to work on, and also, you know, that the regents would be backing him up on the interim president. Now we're in the process. It's a really busy year for the regents, and we're hiring a new president, which is Jill is actually on the search committee, and I know they've been working hard. And those of you who have been on search committees know you're rifling through resume after resume after resume, and then trying to winnow it down. And we stepped into the project process as regents just this month, and it's the first time that we're engaged. There have been 3 regents on that board. But in the meantime, we're also trying to get a hospital built. We're trying to you know, run the university, and Chancellor McMillan will tell you, you get a stack of about 300 pages before every regents meeting with budgets, with fairly complex things that are going on in a $4.5 billion educational system. Everything from the Cloquet Forestry Center to project down in southern Minnesota, working with Hormel, and a lot of things going on with regard to, everything from the UMD medical school to the expansion of, the medical school out to St. Cloud. So there's a lot of stuff going on this year. But it's kind of my job to push this to the front. And for the next 6 years, I'm gonna be working on this every single meeting. One interesting thing, this whole project started with an article that came out, in High Country Magazine, that was called The Land Grab Universities. And, when I was talking with Ann Garagiola, today, she said part 2 of that article is coming out on February 6th. So it's going to be looking at monies made off of tribal lands. And I don't know if that's, apparently Minnesota is included in that. And so that's the day before the Regents meeting, so I'll probably say something at the Regents meeting about that. So anyway, we are going to, this is not a, for me, this is a journey that doesn't end. This is the beginning of the beginning.
Yeah, we'll never be done with this work. So the question, so
I guess the question's like about goals or benchmarks.
Yeah,
or-
so-
Yeah, this is.
I'm gonna be really honest with you, the transition of a president is a huge thing.
Mhm.
They are a placeholder. An interim is a placeholder. They're there to not do harm, do preservation. They are not there to be bold. They are not there to have necessarily their own bright ideas, although they can provide guidance. So that, it what really was the priority of the regents that kept the portfolio alive. I shouldn't say alive, but created an environment where I could continue to challenge folks to advance the work. So we did spend time at the last senior leadership team meeting, which is all of the people that have like VP in the title and chancellors and stuff like that, my colleagues. Had some time to talk about like, what do you see as possible that would be reparative that we should be talking about with tribal leaders? And they put out some really great ideas, some of which we're doing some exploring on. We will be meeting again shortly in March, and I'm gonna have some check-in time with all of them. I will tell you that some of this is my personal failing. We like our plans better than we like taking action in this institution. I would much rather people give me their to-do list with a timeline than another freaking strategy. They'll spend so much time like writing some more and thinking big thoughts and I'm like, put a date on that sucker. I'm checking in. What did you tell me? You told me this was gonna be done. It's not done. What, if I call you next week, where will that be? I'm okay with stalking people, and the easiest way to make me leave you alone is to do what you told me you were gonna do. So with all due respect to the benchmarking and all of that, I need to tell you something that I learned when I went here and I was getting my economics degree. Figures don't lie, but liars figure. And when we talk about things like the permanent university fund and how that fits the road, one of the best lists that I got developed, and I will give credit where credit is due. Has this institution done some really crappy things? Yes. But they've also done some really good things. I wouldn't have gotten through this institution without Indian Learning Resource Center back in the day. I would not have. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, the fact of the matter is too often native initiatives are a flavor of the day and they kind of go like this. And we are on the upswing right now. But when we looked system-wide and I said, tell me everything we are doing, it was 36 pages of single-spaced initiatives throughout the system that are geared towards tribal communities and indigenous people. That is not insignificant. And so, yeah, give us our licks where licks are deserved, but give us the credit where credit is deserved. Now, where I was going with the, figures don't lie and liars figure, we could ask tomorrow, where does the permanent university money go to? And we will see a lot of things that are not indigenous. The tribes are not asking for all of it. They're saying, give us some of it and make slow and steady progress to increasing it. The danger in benchmarking around base dollar figures is moving money from one pocket to another. There are already things that are being funded. If you're gonna say, okay, the thing we've already paid for, we're gonna fund that with permanent university funds, that frees up that money then to be deployed. It's dishonest, right? I shouldn't say it's dishonest, it's deceptive. And not with any malice or bad intent. My point is if you're gonna ask for benchmarking, you better know what you're asking for and how to track it and analyze it. So I would rather look at those things that we know that the tribes are asking for: language programming, stabilize it, fund it, make it accessible to students. The tribes have said housing and moving towards the full cost of attendance. Then do that. That's trackable. 36 pages across the entire university, not trackable. So let's make it meaningful. And so we are having some of those conversations of, rather than set you up for an impossible task where my office's entire capacity is in asking for reports and keeping lists, let's pick some big ones with tribal consent and priority, and then watch the heck out of them. That's my strategy.
Wonderful. So, questions from the audience? Yes, Catherine, we'll have a mic brought over. So if you stand up and the person can see you with the mic.
It is. Okay. I'm a professor here, as I said, and I just first want to thank you because I was born in Minnesota. I'm a settler, born in Minnesota. I went to the University of Minnesota. Now I teach here. And this is, if, as a professor here, if I can help work on this project, it would be one of the most important things I've ever done here at the university and as a citizen of this state. So I just first want to thank you for making this opportunity for us to work with you. And my question is, if we have a project that has been approved by the tribe and gone through tribal council, et cetera, and that project has timelines and various other things, can we, kind of circumvent some of the slowness of our administrative governance and act as, faculty governance side and go to MTAC or somebody else with that project and ask if that is a project that could be in alliance with the report. I haven't read the report yet, so I'm looking forward to that. But is there a way for those of us who have these projects to work more closely with governance here that you have set up to get those projects moving forward, especially if they involve the university?
No.
Okay.
Your process is still applied. The other question I get a lot in addition to that is, Karen, my project mentions tribes. Do you have money? No, they haven't given me that yet. But it does mean that your effort, the effort you are going to expend in doing the work that the way you need to do it, that you make that priority and you work those systems. But do I have some magic to make the bureaucracy go away? No.
All right, we have many hands. I'm gonna try to be equitable and go to Zoom next and here next and then here, so.
Hi, my name is Dylan Young. I just finished a bachelor's at Morris and started a master's at the Twin Cities. So my question for you two was, you talked a little bit about how the current leadership transition at the University of Minnesota is impacting this work. My question is how much of this work, how much has it, impacted, the current hiring process of new president? Are you searching for a candidate who's passionate about this kind of work that the Truth Project entails, someone who's worked with tribal nations, et cetera? That's my question. Thank you.
Sure, I think possibly I can answer that question. So you probably saw the, 30+ page document that called for the president of the university. It's a huge job. It includes all the campuses. Hopefully you saw the mention of the Truth Report and American Indian Affairs in that call a number of times. It was something on our radar as a committee, admittedly on a very long list of 100 qualifications that we want for our new president of the system. I can't give any detail about the conversations other than to say, yes, both myself and other members of the committee asked questions about that. We talked about that as a group, and it's on the wish list. And the Board of Regents we completed our charge and we sent our list to the Board of Regents. They'll be taking a peek at it and determining finalists on February 9th. You want to watch the Board of Regents meeting, and then the finalists will come and tour around.
Committees are meeting the 8th and the board will meet on the 9th, but I just want to say, Dylan was the president of the student body at the University of Minnesota Morris. And I had COVID at this meeting, but one of the regents made a comment that Morris was too diverse.
Yeah.
And Dylan wrote one of the most politically correct letters. Just very polite, and I was like, I wrote him a note and said, God, you're something else. And anyway, I was supposed to go up and visit Morris, and it ended up, I think, 7 or 8 other regents came, because I was a new regent, so I was supposed to tour the campus. I still haven't toured this one. I thought they'd maybe give me a I didn't have to do it, but apparently I still do. But anyway, Dylan was, a campus leader that articulated so generously and invited that particular region to the campus, and I think he that appropriately got pelted with questions, and then. But when we brought 7 regents up there, suddenly it was just us and the students. And then the most difficult thing was us and the faculty, because what was really interesting was they were kind of like, how come when I Google the University of Minnesota, I get the Twin Cities campus? I don't get Duluth, I don't get Morris, I don't get Rochester, I don't get Crookston. And and that was a heck of a good point. It was kind of like they wanted better marketing for Morris. And I was trying to get on the, we don't get this pick where we speak. Apparently we can pick our sort of hint that we want to preference. And I really wanted, I don't know if you're walking this year, but I asked to speak at U of M Morris because the 2 UMD grads both wanted to be at UMD.
I spoke.
You already walked?
I spoke.
Oh, you spoke. Oh, good God. See, this kid's.
You don't need to. You don't need to.
Yeah. I should go on. We should keep.
Do we have a question on Zoom? Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so we have a few questions from Zoom, several of them about the presidential search, so thank you for addressing that. This one goes back to the puff streams that you mentioned earlier, Karen, perhaps a little bit on the technical side. But the understanding of the question asker is that state laws really do constrain and mandate how that money can be used. Is that your understanding of it? Is the hope that the university can work with the state to shift some of that? in the ways that you've spoken about previously, what can university rank and file employees do in order to help push this along as you envision it? Thanks.
I would say if you're talking about rank and file, don't pick the biggest, hardest, most complex item to work on. In your departments, there's what, 12 people you are convinced to make priorities? 20, 50? If you're a big department, 80? I mean, your ability to have influence is greater at the smallest common denominator in terms of developing priorities. Does that mean that we don't prioritize really big system change work that is complex and of a public policy nature? No, that isn't what I'm saying, but I'm saying more players invited to that party who have more resources and political clout in those venues are, right? And so you need, when you're looking at all of the changes you need to make, and you're looking at yourself individually, if I'm gonna pick a legislative action, then I'll engage the upper leaders, the regents, the university government relations department at the University of Minnesota, but also the tribes themselves. They have huge political gravitas in the state and federal level. So prioritizing that with them. But I'm gonna go back to what are we gonna ask for? Is it a diversion of the puff stream? And will that make us feel better? And will that actually accomplish what we think it will? Not if we divert puff stream that's going to normal operations against 5 campuses. It just gets diverted and then they fill in that pocket with other money that might be being spent, right? So it's understand at your department, your college, your campus level, where the investments are and making sure those priorities align. And then if you need more, you work with the chancellors and the senior leaders that have it go up and say, here's where we would like an investment. Because here's the thing is all of the puff money is currently spent on something. It's all being spent. So you're gonna tell folks who are already having it in their budget that you are gonna slowly but surely take it away. And you can do that. I mean, hell, this institution has done it every single year since, Reagan, when they started cutting higher ed budgets. What do they tell you? They say to your departments and your colleges, 3% budget next year across the board. How do you figure it out that the total has to be 3%? And then they get you all in a room and then somebody makes a decision and everybody is universally unhappy, right? That's what will happen with the diversion of the puff money. It doesn't create a new pool of money, it creates a deficit somewhere else. And then you're gonna have those really bad feelings. Am I saying you shouldn't do it? Of course not. That's not, my whole job is to tell you that you need to invest in things that support Native learners, Native communities, Native scholarship, and new knowledge creation and workforce development and all of those things. What I'm saying is those decisions, much like tribal sovereignty, they happen the best and the easiest in the smallest place possible, but consistently everywhere.
All right, Melissa, you want to stand up?
Yeah,
I'll bring you the mic.
and if the microphone is necessary.
Melissa Olson, and I will just say I am reporting for NPR. I have a laundry list of questions, that follow up on some of the things that you listed out, Karen, and I'm hoping that we can follow up after the meeting, just so I can get some clarification on some of those. But I'm really curious, given that this has been really the first opportunity that leadership at the University of Minnesota has come to sort of address what's in the truth report. Do you feel like this report is leading to sort of a spirit of reconciliation at the University of Minnesota? In other words, I hear you when you're saying, it's frustrating to be, the special advisor to an interim president, and that maybe that president could be here. I'm genuinely curious to know if you think that this is, if this is moving towards the spirit of reconciliation between the University of Minnesota and tribes and the larger community.
I did express frustration at being the Native American in the room. First and foremost, what I said was, I didn't feel like I needed to take responsibility for the whole institution. So let's, if you're gonna say what I'm saying, get it right. The spirit of reconciliation, institutions don't have feelings. The people within these institutions have feelings. And I will never say that everyone in this institution is so inclined to be geared towards equity and justice. But I will say, and I believe this, and it is my opinion, that I have found most of the leadership that I have, nearly all of the leadership that I have come across to be incredibly well-intentioned, to be values-driven, to want to do a better thing, to be honestly pained when they see inequity. Now, does that make them automatically prone to making change? No. We have people who are in faculty leadership that started out as biologists and slowly moved up and had a leadership position. They weren't trained in organizational management. They weren't trained in public policy. They weren't trained in budgets. I mean, so, but they slowly bring themselves through to this point where they have leadership and then have these huge complex organizations to work through, multiple stakeholders who all have opinions about what they do. Everything is a group project. So I see people that are having the conversations more and more and more and being very intentional about saying, how can we do better? I don't even know where they are all occurring. Sometimes I hear about them afterwards with them advancing something that looks great and a good investment. Do I think that in my lifetime that we will be looking at tribal communities and say that we think we are doing okay? Yeah, my parents hope for that. My grandparents hope for that. You know, my great-grandparents hope for that. You know, all we can hope is that we do better. But what I hear from folks is this report gave them a tool to understand that they take it seriously, that they understand that it's relational with tribal communities, and those relationships have to be made at many different levels, not just with tribal leaders. Tribal leaders don't give a crap about some department in one school. They have nations to run. What they want is you to not do harm and to add value, right? And create environments where their students can grow and learn and be personally self-sufficient. So all of that is a really long answer to say, I wouldn't work here if I didn't think that there was a potential for progress. I will also say that that doesn't mean I am expecting 100% consumer satisfaction with this institution and or any individual within it. I worked in the federal government. I didn't expect it there either. I didn't even get it when I ran my nation. Because people are more complex than that, and we need to meet them where they're at, and for each person that's different.
Thank you. We'll go to Mary and then Brenna, and then one more in front, and that will probably be it.
Thanks, Mary Ellen, School of Medicine. Thanks for being here and answering the questions. The question that I had that I thought was right now, I'll leave or take off on Dr. Delco's question is, what is, and Dad, you might know this, what is MIAC looking for as far as a response to this? I totally appreciate you doing Karen one stepwise on this process and just ticking things. What is MIAC? What do the tribes want? How do we report that back to them? And then the second question is off what we hear from Dylan now. When you're looking for that candidate for our next leader, is it a requirement or a preference that they have knowledge about the tribe? So there's a big difference. That's the question.
Thanks, Mary. So for those of you who don't know, MIAC is the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council It was actually a state agency that started during the termination policy, interestingly enough. It's one of the most interesting state agencies that we have because it's actually run by tribal leaders. And so Robert Larson of Lower Sioux has been the head of it for several years now. And they are a forum for kind of getting together with state commissioners and other people come and make presentations to them. Now the meetings go on for a couple of days because so many people want to talk in front of them and provide them with suggestions, ideas, and problems, and et cetera. And it's a good forum for for getting some ideas out there. But when it comes down to it, I think what I have found, what Karen answered to, is that I get a little more out of going and sitting down and having coffee with the tribal council. And when I chat with those folks, what they want is their students to, be able to go into the University of Minnesota, not having to go into debt, being able to have a decent place to live, having enough to eat, and they want to make sure that, it's a safe place and they get a chance to get an education without being encumbered by debt, hunger, the inability to purchase books or whatever. And so, in chatting with tribes, that's, what they're mainly interested in, their own students getting through college and then going out and providing, hopefully they can or they can't, and they hope they come back and work at the reservation and do something that is useful in the community, but they kind of leave it up to them. It's like being a parent. I mean, you want them to, you want to go work in, at JP Morgan, go ahead. Or if you want to be a social worker in the city, go ahead. But they want them to get educated.
So we don't actually use MyAct to arrange our meetings between the president and tribal leaders. MyAct is for state agencies, but also it's problematic because there is one tribe in the state which does not participate in MyAct. They are still a sovereign nation and should enjoy the same rights and privileges and responsibilities as the others. They don't always choose to attend group meetings with other tribal leaders. So but that doesn't mean we get a free pass with not engaging them, right? So they're tribal leader meetings, they're not MyAct meetings. They're just between the president. So that's the topic of conversation for our next tribal leader meeting, is to actually say, okay, here's an update since last time. Here's some of the conversations that we've had. We've continued to move forward. How do you want us to kind of bucket this up? What are the priorities? Last meeting, they didn't want to talk about the truth report. They were happy with just a list of things that were done. And they were saying, here's priorities that we would have. So if they're okay with that, then that's the way we will go. We'll have to figure out a kind of a plan B to communicate with other folks that are stakeholder folks. So it's kind of a work in progress. I don't have a good answer.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Required?
No, not required. So there's just a pretty short list of required qualifications on the presidential search. So things like working with tribes is a big preference. Things like having experience with a medical system, things like having experience with a multi-campus institution. Those things were all preferential qualifications. And so we were very much encouraged by the board and the search firm during the presidential search to have many, many preferences, but a shorter list of required so we could keep our pool broad. So it's challenging. I would love to see it required, but we did not get there. And I know that we're running super short on time.
Can I just add
Yeah.
one thing? President Enter didn't have interim President Enter didn't have a huge bucket of experience
Right.
in tribe. It was zero. It's okay. It's okay partly because the expertise is available to them. And they have to be a good enough leader to understand that they need to, prioritize what the regions told them, or which tribes are on there, seek out that expertise and build those relationships.
I think it's getting back here into what we expect out of, people in this state.
Yeah, there's that.
And our leadership, at the legislative, at our leadership level should have this knowledge, which we're all trying to promote. So that's all I'm getting at.
Yeah.
More of a comment than a question. I knew.
And I guess what I was saying is, we'll go with what we get.
Me, which, thank you so much. I know there are many more questions. We could probably be here, all afternoon, but I know our guests have other appointments, So thank you all, and I would also like to, invite your feedback on the event. They have a QR code here. For those that have time, we have the room till 3, we can mingle, and you can have some snacks. And that is available to us, but please join me in thanking our guests for their time.